Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today it is my honor to welcome David Specht, CEO and author of Old Dogs, New Tricks 2.0. Welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser, your host today. It is my privilege and honor to bring to you an amazing guest that I had an introduction through a mutual friend, David Specht, who is a published author of Old Dogs, New Tricks. David, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
I'm glad to be here, Kale. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's been a whirlwind since we released the book just over a month ago, and I've done so many podcast interviews. It's trying to getting all the names straight and all. So thank you so much for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. And I love being able to use my small platform and however I can to promote people just like you, because you are so needed in today's workplace, in today's culture, in today's family life, like all aspects of this. And anytime somebody, puts themselves out there and takes that risk of, putting pen to word and word to paper, like that is truly fascinating to me. And I really want to hear this story. Now you wear a ton of different hats. We've had
Yes.
previous conversations about all the many things and the journey that you've been, and certainly, I think admittedly it's okay to say you're not a younger man anymore.
No, I just turned 54 last week, so I think midlife is unless I plan on living to 108, I'm probably slightly past the
All
midlife point
right.
in my physical life for sure. But I'm just getting started in my career life, I feel like. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that.
That's awesome. Now, since we don't have many days to go over the last 54 years of your life, what are some of the highlights, and what was maybe the biggest highlight that took you to, like, I've got to get these thoughts out in this book. I've got to write Old Dog New Tricks. Like, what led to that?
Well, the interesting part about the book is I call it version 2.0 because I wrote a version of it back in 2014, 2015
Okay.
that sucked. I'll be honest with you. I took a collection of blog posts that I did, I threw them all together. And the reason I call it 2.0 was, I have a very light IT background. And my thing is the 1.0 version of anything is not good, right? Whether it's Apple, iOS, Windows, whatever, the 1.0 is never expected to be good. You work out the bugs, etc. Well, from 2015 to 2018, I just kind of was in like a flat line of my life and my career. I was just kind of getting by. And in 2018, I made a decision. My wife and I decided that enough was enough. We decided to go what we call on a health journey. And in the course of 2018, I lost 120 pounds with the help of a coach, a simple system, and all these things. And it reignited something in me at that moment that I was like, you know what? There's other guys like me. Because remember, in 2018, I was 49. I didn't want to be a 50-year-old fat guy. Okay. I wanted to be a good grandfather, somebody who's active. And I didn't even have grandkids at the time. I now have a grandson. So through the course of that, I was like, there's got to be other guys out there like me, which then brought back the whole concept of Old Dogs, New Tricks. And I began to rewrite it, taking the best things of what was in the original one, but really codifying it in a way that somebody could take it and use it in their life. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit.
Right.
And the idea of pivoting, the idea of that we have to change because the acceleration factor of change in our world was just nuts. I mean, people were no longer going to the office. You needed to lead people through a Zoom call. So all these things were coming into play, and I'm like, okay, now I really have to get this book out there. So I went back for a third time and really put in some material that was COVID inspired. I don't mention COVID per se, other than once or twice in the book, but they are COVID inspired because people like me, we entered the workforce, we entered leadership like this is the way it's always going to be. I have the skills I need. I don't really need to do any more with it. And now and let's just lead it until I can get the gold watch and move to Florida. And that's not the case anymore. Number one, retirement is a thing of the past. Number two, you can't lead a generation that learned school on a computer screen the same way you led somebody who worked as a bag boy when they were 15. I mean, it's just a different mindset. And so, but there are some principles, while the delivery method may be different, there are principles that are timeless. And so that's what I tried to do is take some of trial and error of my life, I went through the major pivot points in my career to show people that they can navigate pivot points in their own life and career so that any old dog can learn a new trick. It's not necessarily that the trick is new, it's just the mechanism of application may be new.
Right. And I want to talk about that because what you're saying, right? 100% makes sense. That's common sense. Well, what I would consider common sense. Like we understand we have to be flexible, we have to adapt, especially when the whole world goes absolutely insane, right? And we're certainly in generations, and we have been, I think, for a while, that concept of organizational leadership, that cultural leadership training, kind of there's very few arenas where that still applies and it's still effective. So you talked about, shoot, I think I just lost my thought for a second there. Oh, yes. What was it that caused you? What was it that was in you that recognized that said, okay, this isn't going to work. It's not working. Like, was it an event? Was it just kind of like writing on the wall, a little bit looking into the future? Like, was there something that said, hey, we need to transition to this?
I think probably the biggest thing, it wasn't any one thing. So I'll tell you that. Um, Leaders, and I guess I should say managers or people in leadership positions,
Right.
a lot of times are control freaks by nature. We
Yeah.
just are. We had to do all the work, especially from the entrepreneurial side. You were the business, and now all of a sudden you have a team and you've got to lead that team, but yet you're still a control freak because nobody can do it as good as you. That was my mindset for years. And I would hit these little moments in my leadership growth, if you will, where I couldn't have control.
Right.
So, for instance, I was the president of the Louisiana Press Association. My previous life, I was a newspaper publisher,
Okay.
and as president of this statewide association, I was actually president when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans.
Wow.
I was located a 5-hour drive away near Shreveport, Louisiana. The whole world's shaken up. Worst natural disaster on American soil at the time, and there were decisions that had to be made on the ground there that I couldn't make.
Right.
So me as a control freak had to learn really fast to trust my people on the ground. And I actually told the executive director, I said, look, my job is to have your back, and your job is to make sure I don't need to. So you act as if you're me right now, and then you just let me know what you did so I can speak to the rest of the board from a position of authority and knowledge.
Right.
And that was really the first, really, I didn't have a choice but to let go of the reins a little bit because I'm not there. I have to stay in my part of the state. Plus, you couldn't get to that part of the state. This was one of those situations where the control freak in me had to be pushed aside a little bit, but you still use the knowledge and the skill set from the control freak to help the person on the ground. And so I began to start learning, okay, how do I take what I can give to somebody and empower them to do the right thing, knowing that they're not going to do it. One of the things I tell people is just because it's not the way you would do it doesn't necessarily make it wrong.
Wrong, right? What? No, no, no. What? I
Right.
may have to patently disagree with that, right? Like that's every leader that's listening to this right now is going, "What did he just say?"
It's a lesson we all have to learn in leadership.
Right. 100%.
I'm a Gary
Usually the
Vaynerchuk
hard way.
fan. And Gary says, 80% of how you would do it is good enough.
Right.
And you're like, but I focus on the 20% that wasn't like the way I would have done it, right? So that's part of that journey of understanding. And I think that's, certain moments like that over time. I had another moment where I had somebody design something for me, and I'm a graphic designer in a past life as well. Again, the many hats thing.
Yeah.
And they said, why? I said, because I want you to design this thing. He said, but you're just going to go back and redo it. And it was one of those aha moments of like,
Yeah.
I can't keep doing this. I can't keep going behind. I had another employee at one time tell me something that, David, you only tell me what I did wrong. Do I ever do anything right? And again, it was all those little bitty moments that said, okay, these are some lessons that I need to learn in my own journey. Now, again, back to the newspaper thing. When you publish a newspaper every day, you're literally putting your work out for people to take pot shots at all day long, right? That's that, picking on the local newspaper is a favorite pastime of just about every community in the world.
Yeah.
So the idea of putting it out on paper wasn't nearly as scary as I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to put something out there that wasn't of service. And I realized that these lessons that I was learning, albeit, very uncomfortable lessons, could be shared. And that if there were more guys like me, more ladies like me that are in this boat, that maybe they were an entrepreneur and now they're having to build out a team, or again, they find themselves surrounded by young people and they just don't know how to talk to them.
Right.
Taking these principles, they can apply them to their leadership journey. They're not going to get it right the first time. Nobody gets it right the first time, but they will be able to progress from where they were to where they want to be.
Right. Right. That's that's pretty incredible. There's a lot to touch on that, and I think you dropped some pretty amazing insights for people that are in a very similar. They probably had those conversations where an employee says, "What's the point of me doing this? You're just gonna come behind me and do it and change everything how you exactly want it, right?" And that's, we're not in the Ford factory where we need everything, or at least most of us aren't in a Ford factory where we need every part stamped to very high precision specifications, and a slight change is just going to cause the whole car not to work. That's not generally how businesses operate, right? There are interpretations and there are different ways of doing things. I did want to touch on, because you mentioned it in the beginning as part of your journey, and I think we can't ignore it. This transformation that you went through physically, right, in
Don't
2018. How now, and first of all, I just got to say congratulations. One, for recognizing, two, for taking action, and three, for actually following through and doing that.
Thank you.
How impactful was that transformation to not only, you, obviously you personally, I think there's scientific studies that will prove and show that you just extended your life by probably decades by losing that amount of weight. But how impactful was that to both you, but like your business and like your marriage? Like what did that
Oh,
transformation do and mean for that?
well, I mean, obviously there's the physical, right? You're not as tired. I could give you a laundry list of the things, that the pills that I'm no longer taking, right? Because somewhere around 40, your body says, "Oh, I can't do this anymore," and all of a sudden the pills come in, right? Whether it's anti-inflammation, high blood pressure, whatever. Again, I'll preface that by saying results not typical.
Right.
But at the same time, there's so many different things. Okay, let's talk about perceptions, because I think perceptions are a big key to this. I tell people all the time, I say, if you want to go on a diet, go to Walmart, find you something on the shelf and stick to it, because it's like toothpaste. Whatever you stick to is going to work eventually. But here's a perception. Number one, when you see a fat leader, you think he's lazy. We equate overweight with lazy. It's not right, but it is the perception, correct?
100%. Yes.
So when you're leading a team and that team sees and somebody who has, because weight issues are generally, again, broad brushes make for ugly paintings, but generally speaking, overweight is a symptom of an imbalance in your life in some area, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever. So when you're leading a team, the confidence in you as leader is eroded when you have a part of your life that's out of balance. And so the transformation of my physical body, number one, it did bring balance to my life. It gave me tools to, I was an emotional eater. Eat when you're happy, eat when you're sad, eat. So I have tools now to navigate that, to build in good habits. But what it did was it told my team that I'm going to be here and that they can count on me to be here. That's one of the things that really probably was the biggest thing. Now let's talk about relationships. When you don't feel good, you don't act good. You have a short fuse, or you're just too tired to deal with something, or you're exasperated with, whatever. My relationship with my wife, because I may have lost 120, but she lost 60 during the same time frame. So what has happened to us is we began to lean on one another through the process of weight loss and begin to help one another create the environment for health. And then that helped me pivot and step into the new journey of being a health coach. We actually coach people together. Generally, she handles the females, I handle the males, because that just makes, good sense. Sometimes you just don't share things with a member of the opposite sex, but that's a whole nother discussion. But it really brought our relationship tighter together because we were on the same page in something. And now that we're working together, all of a sudden I have a home office. I'm in a home office now, which that means you have to navigate home life while you're at work life. I don't have an office to go to per se. So this journey of how to navigate the stressors of life, how to create habits that help you as opposed to hold you back, really applies to every aspect of my life. And that was not what I expected when I'm like, you know what, I need to lose a few pounds. It really changed everything. It was the one thing that changed everything. And I believe that no matter who you are, what area of life where you have an imbalance, it's not always health. There's some really physically fit people who are broke as a joke, right?
Yeah.
So, it's, financial fitness, or it's leadership fitness, whatever area of your life it is. If you'll go ahead and take on that thing and gain some traction, it will inspire you to take on other things. Because I lost 120 pounds, I'm like, okay, I can accomplish things in my life again. Now I'm inspired to get back into leadership. I'm inspired to skill up in other areas. I've gone on 3 different hikes up, one in Arizona, one outside of Nashville. You know, I wouldn't have gone, I wouldn't have gone on a hike if you paid me 5 years ago. And now I'm like, oh, let's get the All Trails app and figure out where we can go hiking. That's a whole, because I lost the weight, and not just because I feel better, but I have a confidence level of, oh, I'm not going to die climbing this hill. Now I may not enjoy it, but I'll enjoy the accomplishment. You know, the world looks a whole lot different from a mountain peak than it does from the base of the mountain.
Yeah.
But you don't get to see it until you climb the mountain.
Right. Yeah, because there's not always a bus line that will take you up there.
No.
Just get out.
And so those are some of the things that I think really changed. And getting back to what the book says, you're never too old. We've got clients that have lost weight that are in their 70s. We've got them in their 20s and everywhere in between, because it all really boils down to a decision. And that decision is, enough is enough. I'm going to start doing something, and I'm going to start working towards something. So many of us in my age group are running from something. They're running from a heart attack. They're running from, whatever it is, the old father time trying to catch up with them. They're running from something. And so their changes that they decide to make are extrinsically motivated, meaning they're running away from this outside influence.
Right.
But when you're running towards something, and when you're trying to accomplish something new, now all of a sudden that goal setting, that activity is intrinsically motivating, which is a much longer term, and it'll hold a whole lot better. Because the great part about intrinsic motivation is, when you reach that level, now you can ask yourself the question, what's next? Right? Okay, I lost 120 pounds. What's next? Oh, I want to go hiking. What's next? I want to play, golf, 3 days a week or whatever. I want to get better at it. And I can now, because I don't have a stomach in the way of the club or whatever. But when you're running away from something, there's this finite point. Oh, I ran away from it. I'm done. Again, working towards something is so vital. And as a leader, we should always be leading our teams towards something and then going, what's next? Let's go to the next level. Let's go to the next thing. And those are really the companies that you see are dynamic in this world, are always working towards a next higher goal or a next new thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's again, there's so much to talk about. And
I know, and I ramble off of it for
no,
for
you're
you know
totally
for
fine.
moments at a time.
It's
It-
all amazing, because you're right. And I wanted to highlight this for people that don't, maybe are not catching it, is yes, there is that danger, right? That you're running away from, like, I need to get out of this situation because it's literally dangerous. Whether that was for you in your weight loss journey of, maybe a doctor said, hey bro, you don't change something, you're going to, and the medications are just piling on, but you're like, okay, but there has to be a transition from, all right, I'm now out of danger, maybe my heart disease risk and all the things, or being fired, whatever that situation is for people, I'm out of danger. There has to be a transition to drive you towards something, towards that positive. So I just wanted to highlight that, and that's amazing that you did do that. And the second thing I want to talk about, or again, I guess highlight, is so many people, they may realize that, like, yep, I'm carrying around an extra 100 pounds, an extra 200 pounds, an extra 50 pounds, whatever that looks like for them. And they're so intimidated by the thought, right, of like, oh, this journey would take so much to go through this. But is it what I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this? The decision to get the information to make the change, was it that, or was it the the results that you were mainly focused on. Does that make sense? I'm trying to think of a way, because there has to be, like, I understand I've got my limitations. Obviously, I was doing things wrong to get myself in this situation. How do people find, and how important is finding that access to information in order to make those changes? Is that a
Well,
journey that you struggled with, or was it just like, hey, I went online and I found a weight loss coach, and then boom, it was
it actually boiled down to some friends we had that had gone through the journey themselves.
okay?
And I guess you could say I borrowed their confidence
Perfect. I love it.
because I saw that they could do it. Then I believed that I could do it. So I borrowed their confidence in the beginning.
So
I
having that
will,
example, yeah.
yeah. And so, it's one of the reasons why in our health coaching business, we market a lot on social media, not from a paid standpoint, but always living our life out loud and reminding people where we came from and where we're headed to, and that if we can do it, you can do it kind of mentality. So that aspect of it was really what kind of helped. But one of the things we do with our clients, and one of the things that was done with me for a lot of years, was that thing to work towards. What is your deeper why?
Right.
And for me, remember, I was 49.
Yeah.
My kids, had basically moved out of the house. My youngest son's married, and I knew that at some point a grandchild would be involved in my life. I mean, hopefully, at the
Yes.
time. And so I would picture in my head the kind of grandfather my father was, because my dad was a super active grandfather. I mean, all the way up until he died at an early age because of pulmonary fibrosis. He died at 65. But all the way up to that point, he was shooting basketball with my boys. He was active. They would play golf together. They go bowling together, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, I want to be that kind of grandfather. And so as you get to that away from danger standpoint, right? Now all of a sudden you're trying to develop those habits. What am I working towards? What are the things that I can remind myself that, so I don't fall back into those habits, or when I do, it's just a pebble in the road and not a full-blown stumbling block. So I have a 3-year-old grandson that I put on my phone, as you can see here, and I look at that phone when I'm tempted to fall back into bad habits. If I'm having a crappy day and I'm like, you know what, it'd be really cool to go run through the Hardee's drive-through right now and get you one of the big friggin'
Triple doubles.
burgers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I said, that would his grandfather do that?
Right.
It's a stopping and challenging the decision. I'm always in full control of my decisions, and that's the one thing that we have to do is realize that we're in full control of our decisions. Yes, we have influences, and yes, there are things that can trip us up, and we have habits that have developed over time, and so there's a process involved. But when you take back ownership of your decisions, it's a super freeing thing.
Right.
And I try to teach that to my team is like, look, you're in full control of your decisions. I can tell you we've got to hit this goal here or we've got to do this, but it's really up to you to make the decision that you're going to do the work to help
Yes.
get us there. I
Yes.
can't I can't I can't go make sales calls for you. I can't go, I can't send that email for you. I can't pick up the phone for you. But what I can do is tell you this is the expectation. These are the tools we have given you that we know are successful. Now take full advantage of that, make the decision that you're going to do the work. And that's really how all of this comes into play is empowering that person to make that decision and then guiding. You can see behind me, I'm kind of a nerd here, but it's not our job as leaders to be Luke Skywalker. It's our job to be Yoda.
Hmm.
Luke has to raise the X-wing out of the swamp, even though Yoda can, and he proved that he could.
Right.
Nothing advances until Luke does it.
Right.
And that's really kind of how we need to be as leaders, is empowering our people to do the work. We're the guide that comes alongside them and helps them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. That's amazing. Man, that's some sage and wise advice. You have so many. Man, this is exciting for me, just talking to somebody like you that kind of, they get it. They understand that it's not about you. It's not about even just the team that you build. It's about the people on the team as far as the
Mm-hmm.
leadership, and that, it's not too late maybe you sucked at a leader. Maybe you got fired before. Maybe you had your entire team quit on you because you're just an absolute terror to work for. But it's not too late. And this is something that can be learned. Like I always, I don't, you may disagree with this, but I always kind of say there's no such thing as a natural leader. They're just people that have gone through processes that have gotten better at being leaders, right?
And usually they're thrust into the position, and that's how they become the quote unquote natural leader, right? I was the tall kid in school, so they always say Specht, whatever, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's that aspect of it. I also believe too, and I want to touch on something that you said. If somebody sucked as a leader to this point in their life,
Right.
because that was me, and understand that was me. I have not arrived. I still suck as a leader in some ways. Okay,
Right.
but I also said, you know what? I can always learn. And I
Yeah.
will tell you, the very first time I took a hold of that was when my father died, because all of a sudden his newspaper company was my newspaper company. And all of a sudden everybody was looking at me for the leadership. And I was the I'll do it all myself. I don't need you person. And what I learned was when I began to read, they say readers are leaders and leaders are readers. I started with Good to Great by Jim Collins, which was just mind
Yeah.
blowing. And I checked it out from the library. That tells you how low my commitment level was.
Right.
So I did that, but then I followed it up because I my wife and I were in tremendous amounts of debt in the early 2000s, and we went through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, and Dave Ramsey released a book called Entre Leadership,
Right.
and I read that book, and all of a sudden my mind began to open to other ways of leading. That employees are people that show up late, leave early, and steal while they're there. Team members are people that are on the mission with you. And so we just started changing how we even talked about our team. One of the things that he said out is that employees are members of your team are not cogs in a machine. You need to remember they're people with families and their own stressors and all that, and understand that when you're coming, again, it doesn't excuse, because the work still has to get done, but it helps you frame it better to where you're not always in an or else mentality. You're going to do this or else, right? So though, but again, though, I wasn't natural to that. Those were things that I learned and then I skilled up in over the course of my career. And it doesn't matter if you're 25 or 55 or 75, you can always learn a skill and skill up in that area if you're willing to be molded.
Right.
And that's what it
And the
comes down to.
importance of removing that ego, right? That pride and self, I don't know, it's not really self-respect, but just removing that arrogance aspect of it, of like, hey, I'm the leader, no one's going to tell me what to do, how to do
And the
it.
thing is, the greatest, we try to shine the light on, these are the greats. If you had a Mount Rushmore of great leaders, none of them thought of themselves that way. None of them had, so if you're wanting to be a great, it's almost, I don't know the right word at the moment to say it, but everything that you want, you can have if you quit doing what you've been doing. Right? If your ego wants to be the greatest, okay, fine. But understand the path to greatest is not the path you're on.
Right.
So let's change your path and you'll get what you want. But let's change it so that you can get there, because the path you're on is not the path that's going to lead you to where you want to go.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Now, because I want to be respectful of your time, but I think this is an important question. I ask this of all my guests of and again, you've worn many hats, you've been in many different environments and industries, so you have a lot of breadth of knowledge to pull from. But have you found a common difference, or is there a difference, in your opinion, in a business sense, between a manager and a leader? What are your thoughts?
So how they say, what is it? A partridge is a pigeon, but a pigeon's not a partridge.
Okay. Yeah.
The same is true between management and leaders, right? A manager can be a leader, but or a leader can be a manager, but a manager not of itself can be a leader. And here's why I believe. Number one, managers typically are controlled by a system or a structure that they've been placed in, and they're very good at operating that structure. A leader sees the structure as necessary, but he says, hey, what are some ways that we can empower our people to do even better than what the structure requires.
Right.
You can't go without structure. It can't be, hey, everybody can do what they want when they want, and hey, I'm your leader. No, but what you can do, uh, um, again, everything rises and falls on leadership. That's what John Maxwell says. I mean, good Lord, every leadership book will tell you that. But how you lead determines whether you're a manager or a leader. If you're so stringent on the structure because that's the way we've always done it and that's the way it has always worked, then you're never going to step into that fully leader that you can be. It's when you're able to recognize your own shortcomings and scale up, and where you're realizing, okay, this may have worked up to this point, and the principles in here are good, but now we may need to change mechanisms or change people on the bus or whatever. That's when the leadership aspect comes in. When you're not stuck to a formula, now all of a sudden you can become a leader, and the people that do that, they become elevated as a leader by the people they lead, not in with themselves. I can name you CEO, and by position, you're now the leader. But it isn't until those people believe in you that you can actually lead them well. And they're not going to believe in you if all you're doing is sticking to the management structure that you've been given, right? They would say, oh, I can do that. He's just sticking to the book. Whereas when you walk in the door and you say, I know this is the way we've always done it, but as you can tell, it's not working anymore. So we're going to try this. Does anybody have any suggestions of why this will or won't work? Or does anybody have a better idea that we should try? You've elevated now to leader instead of manager.
I love it. Yeah, that concept of, yes, a manager is a leader in a sense, right? Because they're in charge, right? They set the standards or anything of that nature, or they uphold the standards, but that doesn't mean people will follow them outside of that construct,
Right.
right? That system that they've been in charge of. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, David, I know Old Dog News Trick. People are probably chomping at the bit. Where do I get this? Is this, I'm assuming, on Amazon? Is this direct order? How do people get into your world if they're going, man, this guy is speaking my language. I got to learn more about him and his journey and your coaching.
Well, there are two places if you want to use your web browser: davidaspecht.com,
Okay.
specthealth.com. Specht Health is our health coaching business. davidaspecht.com is where I put everything: my podcast, my blogs, and you can actually click on Old Dogs New Tricks there, or just do /ODNT, and it will take you to a landing page where I have a special offer that if you will buy the book off of Amazon, which there's a link there, bottom of the page, and share your receipt, you'll get a free 12 lesson course called Step into Purpose that me and two of my colleagues did, that will help you. So many people are told, find your purpose, start with purpose, start with why, whatever. Okay, I have my purpose. Now what? This is 12 actual courses that you can take. You can take them all one day if you really want to, or take them, over a period of time, that helps you address each area of your life to help you actually fully recognize what's possible, cultivate your habits, and really step into that purpose. Because your purpose may be to lead a team of 100 people. Well, you're going to have to start by being able to lead yourself well
Right.
first, right? So this is absolutely free to the people who take advantage of buying the book off of this podcast. It's just my free gift to them. It's valued at $300. I mean, if you were to go to Step into Purpose right now, you would have to pay $300 to get it, but you'll get it absolutely free if you just upload a copy of the receipt or a screenshot from Amazon that you ordered the book.
Perfect. That is awesome. Thank you so much for doing that, because I think that is an absolutely critical need of people. You're right. Like, hey, I found my purpose. Now what? But yeah, thank you for creating that. So that's
Absolutely.
davidaspecht.com/ODNT. There'll be
Correct.
a link for everyone that's either listening or watching. There'll be a link in the description of this, so you make sure. And
Absolutely. And it'll take you to with all the rest of the information.
yeah. Well, David, this has been absolutely like mind opening for me. This has been so enjoyable. Is there any last things, maybe something you've got coming up that you want to share with the audience, make sure they're aware of before we say our goodbye?
I'll just reciprocate by saying, thank you for having me on your show. If you want to join my show, I do a morning live every day. Follow me on social media. I do a morning live on YouTube Live, on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn, David A. Specht. It's called keep this in mind, the daily show, and I share a few thoughts, and then we bring it into a podcast as well. So, if you want more content like what I do, I try not to ramble on for quite as long as I did on some of our answers, but I do give about 10 minutes every morning, Monday through Friday, about some thoughts that will help you in your life and your leadership.
I love it. I love it. Yes, that would be amazing. And everybody, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to David's social channels and get access to that, because I've been listening since we've been introduced to each other, and you drop some pretty amazing and often funny stories on there. So I particularly loved your run through the airport story that you had
Yeah,
a week or two ago.
and nobody was chasing me. That was the miracle.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. David. I really appreciate your time. Everybody, thank you for joining me and my amazing guest, David Specht. I look forward to talking to you no matter where you're at in the world. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.
Okay, bye.